Microphones off, you're more than welcome to come on camera. It's lovely to see your faces. And obviously, if you've got your questions, we'll invite you to come off camera towards the end of the agenda when there are some questions to be asked. What else is on there that I've missed? Nothing, I don't think. So we can go straight into it, I think, and kick off with, I think, Ben is presenting next, or is it you, Sammy? I'm not sure. But Ben, please come on in. And we can kick off the webinar about this mods.
Might help if I took myself off mute. Morning, everyone. I'm Ben Bennett from Sockton Advisory. I'm a senior consultant working on this project under contract to Alison and her colleagues in NHS Transformation Directorate. Just to sort of give you a quick overview of how we've got to where we are on the 30th of January. We ran a discovery phase for the first 3 or 4 months of the project, which gave us some extremely valuable insight into what people were looking for from a terminology product. Our Metadata Works colleagues, Adam and colleagues, did a fantastic job between then and the end of November to create the first iteration of the products, which we shared in 2 webinars on at the very end of November. We've been engaging with you ever since, and there are a good many people on this call who I think we've spoken to either individually or in groups or via email and other means since the end of November. I want to thank you all very, very much for the input you had, for the comments that you've made, and I hope you'll see that those comments and those suggestions are making their way into the products, and you'll see an element of that in what Adam shows you shortly. We've also developed a set of personas and use cases, which we'll be showing you shortly in a couple of slides' time. They're helping us to define what the products need to do in the first instance to meet the immediate needs of the key personas for whom the mods are principally intended. So let's just start by recapping, if I may, on what is the minimal operational data set, what is mods. The objective, the primary objective, as it says, to ensure that we can collect consistent baseline data across the whole of the adult social care sector. It's designed to form really the core of a digital social care record, and they're designed first and foremost for care providers, although they have a sort of ripple effect and an impact on the way that local authorities and the NHS and others capture and share data. I think one very important thing, and one perhaps misunderstanding that emerged from the last webinars, was about how the mods would be captured and created. There are elements of them where the data is already being captured in other systems. Obviously, the intention is that this product will support interoperability. So if there's data held in other systems that is needed within the mods, the intention is that can be drawn in rather than having to create multiple versions of the same data. That would be a little bit counterproductive. We're working with the DSCR's assured suppliers. We're working with the regulators. We're working with DHSC. We're working with the CQC as part of their wider developments around data gathering, data management. And the intention is that everything needs to fit together and deliver that interoperability that is going to make the biggest difference. Personas. We've developed a number of personas, and we'll share at the end of this. The end of this webinar, we'll share a link, and you can see the full thing. You can see the full slide deck of personas. But we have a performance manager, we have a data architect, a software developer, a business intelligence manager, a business analyst, a business lead. The business lead is in a procurement context, and a system integrator. And I think today we'd like to focus on 3 of those. But we have Sarah, the performance manager. She's responsible for data management, system management, professional performance monitoring. Her primary interest is in the consistency and the quality of data to allow her to monitor performance, and in interoperability. She will be looking to review existing data sets and data standards and preferred definitions to support accurate recording and reporting. And she's looking for that to result in better quality data across both health and social care. Claire, the data architect, her primary interest is in creating effective data specifications to support compliance and data quality. We'll talk about Claire in more detail later. Owen, the software developer, his primary interest is in developing a system that meets the needs of customers, provides a clear data structure, and is interoperable with other systems. And again, we'll talk about Owen in more detail in a little bit. Steve. Steve is responsible for reporting at a regional and national level, so his interest is in data quality and consistency to support more robust reporting. And he wants access to consistent versions of the latest data sets and data standards, again with preferred definitions, to support the production of consistent and credible reports. Jordan, the business analyst, she's working on a system replacement, and her primary interest is identifying the organization's needs, ensuring the system meets them. She wants to be sure that the organization can capture all the information that will be needed to provide statutory returns in the correct format, and both the data catalog and the mods will support that in the way that they're structured. And Raj, who's the business lead for procurement, is looking to find suppliers who can meet the same service and statutory requirements, and he's obviously looking for the most cost-effective long-term solution for his organization. Again, we'll talk about Raj in a bit more detail later. Adam. Adam is a system integrator, so he's bringing data together across multiple health and adult social care systems. He's working to improve the ways that systems can interact and the ways that information can be shared to create digital shared care records, and having access to a data catalog with those consistent data standards, data sets, terminology, preferred definitions will absolutely support the development of those system integrations. And the integrations themselves will be even more effective, of course, if the system developers and the data officers are all using the same data sources, the same terminology, the same data specifications. We'd just like to take a pause for a second and ask you, given those personas, we've got a little poll we're going to put up in the chat, if you could, Sammy. Which of those personas do you most closely associate with, if any?
Hopefully that's popped up for everybody.
Sorry, Sammy?
Hopefully that's popped up for everybody at the front, that
Yes.
poll there.
I have to say, this is new functionality that we're trialing out, everybody, so please help us on our way. Just quickly click a box if you can, that'd be great.
got 33 people, 34 people so far. Oh, it's
Fabulous.
ticking
We're
up
going
at
up.
the moment, who've worked out how to
Fantastic. We're going to try a few of these throughout the meeting. So.
Excellent. So we've got a
I'm
high
just going to wait for the
percentage.
response rate to slow down a little bit, and then let's have a chat about some of those personas in.
Okay. So I think we've had 59 responses now. So close that down.
60, yeah.
If anyone's got any problems accessing it, obviously feel free to pop it in the chat, your response, which one you're most closely aligned with. And I guess if you're saying someone else, if you want to let us know what persona you think we're missing, possibly feel free to put it in the chat.
The other thing I'll say is that we've got a very similar question in the survey, which we will be sending out at the end of the webinar, and there's space there for you to talk about the other personas that you think may be missing. So please feel free to add in as much or as many as you'd like to at that point. Okay, well, the poll will stay open, but let's move on, shall we? So if we just look at them in a bit more detail now. Claire is a data architect. As we were defining the personas, we did think of people who've been involved with the project, who reflect these roles, and we're going to be hoping to speak to some of those people in more detail about both the persona that we've written and also the use cases that we've developed for that persona, just so that we can refine them. That said, we've got lost track. We've now got another 64 responses there, so there will be plenty of you who associate with one or more of these. But Claire's role is she's a data architect, so she's working at a national level, developing new data specifications, and she's obviously focusing on compliance and data quality, and she needs access to consistent versions of the latest data sets and data standards, with their preferred definitions. Key challenge that faces her is inconsistent definitions or ambiguous terms. And I was speaking to one of my colleagues in Softim, who's been on the who's been in the past a product owner for a software solution, who said he used to spend massive amounts of time with his clients trying to agree with them what the definition was for a data element that was due to be collected in the system. And so we can hope to develop something that will support that. Owen is on the other side of the let's say the technical divide. So he's a software developer. He needs to understand the structures that his system users will be operating with, and he needs to be able to understand what they expect to get out of that data set, how they expect to compile it and draw on it, and what it's likely to feed into outside his own system. We've had several people say to us, right back to the start of the discovery phase, inconsistent use of language across health and social care is massively challenging in procurement. And there's always the issue that there will be changing reporting requirements. Of course there will. And every change in reporting requirements means a change to the way that data is collected and held. And we need to offer a platform that can support that and can reflect and respect that And finally, of the three we're looking at in more detail, Raj, who is leading the procurement of a new software product. He's looking for a means of evaluating the suppliers that he's considering, to find the system that will best meet the service needs, the statutory requirements, and the budget requirements. And he will be looking to see what data standards and data sets are mandated in terms of statutory reporting. He'll be looking to see looking for a system that reflects those mandatory requirements, reporting requirements, that captures the information intelligently, and where there is complete clarity around the way that your data is being collected and analysed. As I said, we've developed some use cases, and we've probably got 4 or 5 use cases for each of the 7 personas that we showed you on the earlier slide. But just as a quick summary, they're all in this same format. So as a data architect, I need an agreed conceptual data model so that new standards and specifications can draw on and can build on existing standardized approaches, and ultimately so that new standards and specifications can be readily implemented. We've given you a quick sample of 3 of those use cases here. The question for you at this point, given what we've been able to share of the personas and the use cases, do you feel that they help you to understand the target audience for this product?
Again, you guys should have a pop-up in the screen if that's working for you.
Yes, you should.
No, I can see somebody shaking their head.
We are getting
Got
responses
31
in.
responses.
Yeah.
They're coming in.
So there's some issues with the Teams polling for some people and not others, maybe. Good old Teams.
As I say, if anyone wants to put answers in the chat, and I'm also going to pop my email address in there, if there's any problems, people feel free to drop me an email as well.
I'm also going to share a link to the personas on the website so that you can take a look at them in more detail, and that's got the full persona in the chat. Yeah. Yes, that's got the full persona and use cases for all 7 of them. So
I think we had 62 responses.
62 responses.
So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben, and thank you very much for responding to the poll. And there'll obviously be other opportunities to ask questions and give us feedback, as that's what this is all about, is review, to make sure that we get it right and get your feedback and consider all that within the project. I think next on, Adam, if you'd like to take yourself off mute, and we can go on to the more technical side of this product and talk about the conceptual model and bits. Over to you, Adam.
Sure, thanks, Alison. I'm Adam Maud, from co-founder of MetadataWorks, and we've been working on the technical side of this project. So in terms of social care data standards, I thought I'd start just going back to kind of why we're doing all of this. I think ultimately it's all about trying to establish some kind of best practice for data, managing data in health and social care, and ultimately it's so that we can improve the quality of care. I think the standards really are about establishing a common glue that allow actors across the system to share information. One of the things we're trying to do is provide consistency across different data returns, because there are different teams working on various different projects across health and care system. And we want to make sure that, you know, when we're asking about, let's say, primary support reason, we're doing it kind of consistently. Reduction of burden and duplication, I think, is a key point. We don't want people having to enter the same information again and again and again. Another area of why we've come and tried to create the mods and been working on this conceptual model really is because we were looked across the system. We looked at the healthcare models that were already out there, and they weren't quite fit for purpose. So this project's really all about trying to take those health and care models and try and modify them for social care to make sure they work for different contexts. Consistency in communication, I think Ben's talked a little bit about it already, but terminology is one of the key areas we're trying to establish consistency across. So when people are talking, they're talking about the same things. When we're reporting, we're bringing, you know, different data sets together. We're not comparing apples and oranges. I think, you know, constantly reinventing the wheel is something that happens across lots and lots of different settings when it comes to building new IT systems or building new forms. So this really needs to be a blueprint that stops people reinventing the wheel and stops that inefficiency across the system. Integration's another area that we're really trying to improve. If we're going to be bringing innovative assistive technologies, AI, all sorts of cool new tech to the table, we need a model and we need a consistent language that everyone can, you know, talk about. And ultimately, you know, it's about, you know, reducing cost as well, and building out those pipelines. So next slide, please, Sammy, if that's okay. In terms of our kind of approach to standardization, that's why we're doing it. We've tried to take kind of a twofold approach. We've got one which is nurture. It's kind of a top-down approach where we've gone out and we've tried to link out to international standards. So there's a standard called ISO 13606 for health and care. And what we've tried to do from that is to take that conceptual framework, look at the entities and relationships already applied. And there's a lot of thinking that's gone into that model, and then applied that to this minimum operational data set. But at the same time as doing that, we didn't just want to take an academic approach that took that kind of top-down nurture type strategy. We also wanted to take this bottom-up strategy as well. So what we've done is we've gone out and looked at all of the standards that are already in existence. We've looked at forms across a lot of the suppliers that we're working with, and local authorities as well. And then we've tried to publish that, send out the drafts for feedback and testing, and then we're iterating. So the idea behind this is we don't just want to be, you know, sitting in a room for a long time and not coming up with something that we think is the perfect model. We want to, you know, look at what's going on the ground and try and map those standards to ultimately what is going on the ground. So that's the kind of approach we've taken. We've got top down and bottom up. And next slide, Sammy, if that's okay. And from that, one of the first things I'll present today is a conceptual model. So ultimately, this is the kind of exercise we do on most of these projects. I'm sure anyone working in IT has been part of this. You get a big whiteboard, you stick a lot of you know, post-it notes up, and you try and look at the main entities that you're trying to describe as part of the model. So this is ultimately what we've tried to do, creating this conceptual model. We've come up with all the entities we think that need to be modeled across the system within a digital social care record. We've then gone out and looked at ISO 13606. Again, this is the top-down approach. So we've done the design, we've gone out and looked at the standards that are there. But then we've gone around and we've looked at, okay, what forms are suppliers actually creating? What does this look like in practice? And we've iterated that conceptual model, and that's what I'll be trying to present today. Ultimately, it's meant to be a big picture that describes all of the different things that we would need to include in a minimum data set. So this is, yeah, I guess a key output that we'd really like everyone to feed back on. I think it's ultimately it allows us to look across the whole of a digital social care record and see how all of the different parts relate to one another. So yeah, I definitely look for feedback, and I hope it's going to be useful. So that's the conceptual model. Yeah, and as I said, it's based on 13606, 13940. I don't expect everyone to know these numbers, but ultimately it's international standards, and also a standard call to consensus, and I'd encourage people to go and take a look at those. Next slide, Sammy, if that's okay. So, right, we'll walk through the conceptual model. There's a number of different areas. We've got care actors, we've got assessments, we've got care plans, we've got instructions and activities, we've got observations, and we've got administrative information. So I'll start with a care actor. Ultimately, care actors can be responsible for a person within the care system, a subject of care. These are the main care actors that we're trying to represent as part of the minimal operational data set and the digital social care record. So we've got a care worker, as you can see there. We've got voluntary organisations, we've got health organisations, we've got care organisations, including providers. We've got local authorities. We've potentially got multiple disciplinary teams who are working together across lots of different settings. We've got carers, and ultimately they're unpaid carers. Alongside this, what we'll do is we'll send out the links, and we've got some definitions for some of these entities. We've got our personal contacts, including family members, friends. We've got next of kin, local authority professionals, obviously the subject of care, and then potentially proxies as well. Next slide, please, Sammy. So ultimately, this is really trying to map all of those different care actors and the relationships between those care actors. So what you can see here is you've got your subject of care in the middle. On one side, you've got your care workers and the organisations working with those care workers to provide care for that subject of care. And then on the other side, you've got carers and you've got personal contacts and potentially the subject of care proxy. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to take a look at it. Ultimately, it's a kind of an abstraction of reality. It's not going to include everything, but what we've tried to do here is include all of the main entities you would expect to be described as part of a digital social care record, and tried to put them in a picture, because I think sometimes that can be incredibly useful. So I'd encourage everyone to go online, take a look at that, and see whether it makes sense to you, because ultimately that becomes the blueprint for the rest of the data standards we're developing going forward. Next slide, please, Sammy. So the next one here
sorry
is...
to come in. Somebody's asked a question, so if there's a difference between the blue and green boxes.
Sure. I think green was people and blue is organisations. If that's okay. So here we've got we've got ultimately assessments. So there are a variety of different assessments we're going to try and model. We've got financial assessments. This is currently out of scope for what we're doing as part of the mods, but it's something that we're going to be iterating and bringing in later. But ultimately, assessments are performed for the subject of care. In some cases, you've got a proxy who's expressing the wishes of them. The care worker is involved in the performance of that, sometimes completes it, sometimes it's a different person who authorises that assessment. There could be a number of observations, like safeguarding or other pieces of information that would feed into that assessment, and there will ultimately be an outcome of that. The main assessments we're going to be modelling are the needs assessment, the risk assessment, the about me, and the mental capacity assessment. And that's something we see across all of the suppliers and all the settings and everyone we've talked to. So this is one of the kind of key areas we need to describe as part of a mods, and all of that gets pulled together in terms of an overall assessment for that subject of care. So next slide, Sammy, if that's okay. Sorry, Sammy, is it maybe it's stuck on my screen?
Sorry, I'm on mute, aren't I? And Ben's actually sharing the slides today. I don't know.
Have you
Sure.
got some poll questions to do on these, Adams? Because there's quite a few comments coming in per slide.
We do have some polls. Do you want me to start with the care actor ones? We just had one around, is it easy to understand? And then also, does it reflect your understanding?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
I think I've put it out because people are already answering that question interactively. So
Yeah.
if we take each slide and do the poll to it, then that will keep in line with what you're presenting, Adam. Does that make sense?
Let me just pop back to the care actor slide
definitely.
for the benefit of those who'd like to.
Right, there we go. I've launched the 2 polls for the care actors.
Everyone's seen them. Yeah,
and I think someone did ask a question about sort of giving feedback on this. Obviously, more than happy for you to put things in the chat today, but we're also sending out a survey after the session where you'll be able to give some more feedback as well. Yeah, super. I think we've got like 45 responses on that one for care actors. So if we want to move on to the next one, I can launch the assessment ones as well.
Quite good that you see it. I'm quite liking it.
It is, you can see it in real time. So I guess the only thing, other thing to mention is that we've got, I guess, some key evaluations out of each assessment. So needs assessment, we'd expect a number of needs. Hopefully it's self-explanatory. Out of a risk assessment, you'd identify a number of risks, which then get considered as part of the needs assessment. And there are a number of kind of preference and desires that come out of the about me, as well as kind of demographics and history. Sammy, I've just realised that I didn't send across the care plan slide. I've got it up on my screen. I wonder whether I just share my
yeah, I think you should have permissions to share your screen. Let me know.
I'll share my screen and then I'll hand it back afterwards. So the next one on there is the care plan. So there are a number of elements part of that care plan. It requires consent, which can either be expressed by the subject of care proxy or given by the subject of care. A care worker usually performs, completes and authorises. It might not be the same care worker. Observations influence that care plan. There are obviously a number of needs and risks that are addressed by that care plan. Sometimes it could be a contingency plan, for example, around risks. Usually strengths are evaluated as part of that. There's a number of goals that are targeted, and ultimately out of the back of that, there will be a number of instructions in terms of things that should be done. And really that's what the care plan is all about. It's about creating those instructions for other people to ultimately take care of the subject of care, and there will be an overall outcome. That's something that we've seen across the piece. So those seem to be the main entities that we found when we've looked across suppliers and forms, and ultimately the standards that are out there, as well as things like the PRSB personalised care and support plan. So sorry, I'll go back to those slides again, Sammy, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. I think Benny, you're all right to share them.
Yep, absolutely. Just let me get them back.
I've just put in a poll about the care plan ones as well, so we can give some feedback.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hang on, let me skip to where we were. Getting the thing to. There we go.
Awesome.
Fantastic, thanks, thanks, Ben. So we've got observations. So I'll do instructions, then I'll come back to observations. So as we said, out of the care plan, there'll be a number of instructions. They determine activities, so that could be, you know, someone needs to come in weekly or daily, and then actions are logged against those activities. So you say there's a number of things that you instruct, you've got a number of activities that come out of those instructions, and then your actions are really for someone to log that they've actually done the work. There are a number of different activities out there. It could be a communication, it could be about medication, it could be procedures, tasks, there could be a referral or a number of different services. It's usually performed in a location. Something that we've seen across the board is visits. So quite often actions are grouped into visits, where you have a number of actions performed against a number of different activities. And then you will have outcomes of those actions, which are often logged as well. So we've got our kind of assessment, then we've got our care plan. Out of that, there are a number of instructions, activities and actions that are logged. So this is for the work and the tasks that are going on to take care of that subject of care. I don't know, Sammy, if do we want to do the poll for this one as well, if that's okay?
Yeah, I'll just launch that one now. So we'll do the one for instruction, activity and action first, then get back to observation.
If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. They should both be there now.
Trudy, come on in. You've got your hand up, I can see.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I think my question might have got lost in lots of messages, but so thank you. I'm intrigued by the outcome box because I was wondering if you could provide some more clarity on that, because outcomes can mean so much. There are so many different ways of measuring outcomes, and we haven't really adopted one specific model across health and social care. There are lots in use, and then adapted versions of them, and some people's view of what an outcome is very different to another organisation or individual's view. So it'd be great to know what in that one box you're defining it as.
So it's a good question. We haven't, we're only at the start of that. It could be an observation of an action. It could be logged against the care plan, against those goals. But the reality is we haven't got there yet. So you can see across these boxes. So another of the keys is there are some that are kind of sketched and haven't been filled in properly. These are areas where we basically need to do a whole load more work. So we've done the easier areas first, and I guess you've zoned in on the more difficult areas, which will take a little bit more time. So I don't really have a full answer for you yet, but
outcomes feels like it has its whole diagram and in its own right, because if my outcome is to live my best life at home, then actually that's not going to be one action or one visit. There's a whole load, but then it depends, unless perhaps there's something else which may be a goal, which is, and then a number of goals achieve outcomes. But then all the different models and frameworks that are out there have different kind of hierarchies. So yeah, I'd be very happy to talk to you later about that. We're doing quite a lot of work ourselves, assessing the various different frameworks and models out there and working out what's the closest we've got to a standard.
That would be great. Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate the input. I think it's definitely an area we need to do a bit more work, and it's not a simple one to crack, that one.
Brilliant. Thanks, Trudy. There's several areas we have to say that are huge like that as well, that we're going to be working through in the next few weeks. Consent is one of them big areas that we need to drill down to, and probably have not just one diagram. So thank you, Trudy. I can see some other hands up. Kelly, I think you was first, and then Martin.
Hi everyone. Thanks a lot. I just wondered actually if, given that I think you have an enormous struggle to try and harmonise a clinical standards definition to a social care environment, and everybody wants to achieve what you're trying to achieve, which is making care better. Yeah. But I think that maybe outcomes, maybe PRSB could look at trying to include outcomes in the About Me standard, because if we start with the person and we define by the person what it is they really want to achieve, then everything that delivers against that can be mapped back to it. And then it starts with the person and is in control of the person. Just a suggestion.
Brilliant, thanks, Kelly. And Martin answered that question as you were speaking. Martin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from a PRS, I was just looking through our standard, trying to check all the right bits, but certainly, you know, the overall aim of a person is what's addressed by the needs. They need to be holistic needs, not individual assessment needs. You know, the needs aren't, I need a walking frame. The needs are, I want to get my mobility back or get the best part of my life. And then that has, in the PRSB standard, that has goals which have actions and activities and sub goals potentially, but you can have outcomes against those goals. And those outcomes are, you know, the individual goals that help you get there, and the outcome is measuring how you're achieving against how you're doing against achieving that goal. So that's the way the PRSB standard works from that perspective.
Brilliant, thanks, Martin. And we're very much starting with the PRSB standards and adopting that at the moment. So again, it's ongoing conversations and work that we have to do.
And you wouldn't have goals in the About Me. About Me is what someone wants to share about themselves with all of the people involved in their care. So that doesn't have goals. That's just what you want to share. But it's a key factor in understanding, you know, what's the needs that need to be in someone's care plan, because their goal, their About Me will drive their needs.
Brilliant. Thanks,
as Adam has in his diagrams. I think that bit works.
Excellent, thanks, Martin. I just saw something pop into my right-hand screen as I'm trying to do 3 things at once about the profoundly disabled person that can't ask and say. I think it's relevant to say we've got communication needs within this model, and that will be looked at to address that side. But this is an MVP, so it is the minimum viable product, and there'll always be iterations of things because we won't ever stop developing this. You know, so I think we've captured that in our communications, and we'll be assessing that for people that can't actually communicate themselves or need tools to assist them. If there was anything else you wanted to add, Sandra, please do. Otherwise, we'll carry on.
Thanks, Alison.
Back to you, Adam.
Thank you. Cool. So we've got instructions, activities, and actions that come out of the care plan. You've got those activities that come out of the care plan. You've logged those actions, and then potentially you want to show what's happened as a result of those actions. Some of those things could be observations. So obviously, this isn't the whole range of observations that you could potentially make. And I guess, yeah, I think Martin's already raised the question of, you know, evaluations versus observations in different contexts. But these are the main observations that we're seeing across the piece. You've got things like lab tests, you've got allergies, formulations from mental health care, you've got impairments, circumstances, problems, incidents, alerts, outcomes, strengths and measures. So those are all of the kind of observations that are being made across the system, safeguarding concerns as well. So these seem to be the main ones that we've seen. The ones that we still need to do a little bit of work on are around incidents, as we said, outcomes, and potentially around measures as well. Can we have the right slide up?
Yeah, we're looking at slides centered on activity, not the observation slide.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, apologies. So the observation refers to the subject of care. Often there's one care actor who will record the observation. In some cases, there are many care actors involved in that observation. And they influence, you know, a number of other entities as part of the model. They'll influence reviews, care plans, assessments, instructions. So yeah, ultimately these are the main observations that we've seen, and we've seen we need to do a little bit more work around, particularly incidents, outcomes, and measures. Incidents seem to be measured in the same way, but yeah, there's a space in the mods to do a little bit more there. I'll let the results of the poll come in. And yeah, is it worth, I think they've slowed down, so is it worth going to the next slide? I think it's just administrative information that we've got next. Right, sorry, it's taking a sec to load up on my screen. Right, okay, we're here. So administrative is something that we probably need a little bit more work on. If you look at the conceptual model, we haven't added things like multiplicities in, and we haven't got all of the relationships in, but we felt like there was an extra area. And if you look at the international models, there's usually a space for administrative information, which doesn't quite fit in those other categories. Consent obviously is a big area that we're going to have to do some work on, and a lot of the other parts and entities and parts of the process, require that consent. We've got things like best interest decisions, and we've got a whole section for finances. Audits come up fairly regularly. There's obviously reviews that get planned. Transfer of care is an area we're going to be working on in the mods. Documents, I think there are models for documents, but there's various different kinds of documents. We probably want to talk about the main ones. How do we group things into packages of care? LPA. I think the question, I think it's for both. We need a model for both. And I think we've taken the PRSB model and added it to the mods. So when we put that out, which I believe covers both. Communications, and then more generally audit information. So we want to establish a kind of provenance model where you would expect that any health and social care record, you'd want to know who created the record, who modified the record, when it was updated, when it was completed, if it requires authorization, when the authorization was requested, when it was authorized, and all of that kind of additional kind of logging really that goes on behind the scenes. And again, we're proposing a standards-based model for that, which is now in the mods, which is taken from one of the international standards and something called OpenAir as well. So again, what you can see here is the boxes that are filled in are areas that you'll see in the next version of the mods, where we've found standards that cover these pieces of information. And then the boxes in white are areas that we know that we still need to do a little bit more work on, and will come up in the next iterations. So yeah, I think that probably covers
just got a couple of questions, Adam, around definition of our location on that document, and also Martin, it will cover everything. We've just got a lot of work to do in consent, so it'll cover 100%. All those considerations.
100%. So the consent model we're proposing at the moment comes from, but yeah, we're still at the beginning, but it comes from OpenAir. So it's an ISO 13606 version of consent, and it covers all of those different use cases, and it's a good starting point that's currently used in a lot of different settings. Right, I think next is the mods. So I will go straight in. So I guess based on that conceptual model, as I said, what we like to do with when doing this modelling exercise and standardization exercise, is build that big picture. And then, as I said, some of those boxes haven't been filled in yet, but at least it allows us to understand the main entities that we have to describe and the relationships between them. So if we have missed any kind of main components or big entities, then please do get back to us, and we need to add those in, and we need to add them into the mods. We're trying now with the mods to align it as much with the PRSB models as possible. So as I walk through it now, you'll see there are components of the PRSB core information standard that we've essentially just tried to pull into the tool, and I'll go through which ones those are. But if we go from the top, we'll start with subject of care. Okay, 1 second. So we have the subject of care. So what's changed? Not much has changed since the last version of this. Death details was something that came in, so you'll see that we've added that, and that comes from the NHS standard administrative information that you'd expect. There are a few additional fields that have come in around things like pronouns, kind of some of the key attributes from the Equality Act, things like pregnancy status, and some communications information around whether interpreters required, the various different languages and nationalities. So those are the main additions around subject of care since the last iteration. We've added in some information about personal contacts, which covers a kind of standard form. You've got your name, your contact details, your address, your relationship, the type of relationship you've got to the subjects of care, and then household member, whether you're a household member. That seems to come up a lot in a lot of the forms we're working with. We've got a model for care worker. There's probably a little bit more work to do around this, so I don't think this has changed massively. Ultimately, we've based this on the PRSB model to align it as much as possible with the core information standard. And then we've got GPs and local authority professionals, and I think all of those were in the last version of the mods. We've got information about unpaid carers, and again, it's pretty standard. You've got your name, your contact details, your relationship, the address, and then whether they're a household member and ordinarily resident in, and that's really around, and there were some conversations, we got some feedback on that around whether that was appropriate, but in many cases the local authority have a duty of care to the carers themselves as well, so we wanted to just make sure that relationship was captured. Care organisations, we've still got the same local authority information and care organisation information, so that hasn't changed since the previous version of the mods. So going back to that conceptual model, assessments, we had care needs assessments last time, so that hasn't changed much from the last version. The only thing you'll see in here is we've added a new model for audit information. So we would expect you to log as part of a digital social care record when a record was created, when it was amended, when it was modified, when it was authorised. It's a concept of attestation, or if it was marked as deleted, and then the various different bits of proof that you had. If someone needed to review it and they needed to authorise it, you would add that. So that's the only real change around the care needs assessment. Risk assessments, we've added in a whole load of information that we've seen across the different systems and processes we've looked at. So again, I'd ask people to go in. We've also taken information from the PRSB, so we've tried to align it with the areas where they've described risks and looked at things like trigger factors, relapse indicators, start date of risk, end date of risk, and then obviously the the risk itself. So if you look at some of the PRSB models, you'll see that closely aligns with that. Financial assessments, again, wasn't in scope for this version, so we're not looking at that. We've got the About Me. Again, that's taken from the PRSB model, and the mental capacity assessment, and again, that's taken from the core information standard, so the PRSB model. Care and support plan, again, we've lifted that from the PRSB model. The only area that we potentially think we need to do a little bit more work on over the next iteration is the end of life care plan. So we expect to put some effort into that over the coming months. I think that probably covers assessments, care plans, activities. Again, we've pulled in the various standards around activities. So medications and medical devices has come from the core information standard. Vaccinations has come from the core information standard. Instructions is an area we need to do a little bit more work on. Procedures and therapies comes from the core information standard. So that covers those areas. And then the administrative and legal information, we've got the resuscitation, informed consent is one we've talked about. So this one comes from Open Air. Yeah, it's got things like caveats, evidence link, form of consent, what the consent is for, audit information. We've got the LPA, which comes from the core information standard, DOLS from the core information standard, Mental Health Act or equivalent, again, core information standards, and ADRT, which comes from the core information standard. And that probably covers yeah, the bulk of what we've got in there. So I think there's quite a bit more in this version of the mods. I'd encourage you to go and look at it. Ultimately, the kind of the key area and the key thing we're trying to do within this version of the mods was align as much as possible with the PRSB models. We got a lot of questions when we first published the mods saying, you know, which was fair. Is this going to align with, if we're going to be asked to do one thing with PRSB and one thing for the mods? We don't want to have to build two different systems and have two different standards. So that's really the direction at the moment. Is we've tried to build out a conceptual model to look at all of the entities we need to include in that minimal operational data set. We've gone out and looked at where there are existing standards, where there are existing models, for example, within the PRSB or within Open Air, and we've pulled those into the mods. So this is the second draft. We've got one more draft coming. I'd encourage everyone to, yeah, ultimately go to the website and take a look. Please give your feedback. I don't think we're going to run a poll on it now. I think there's quite a lot of content in there. So I'm not going to step through it each attribute one by one. I think we could be here for many different hours. But yeah, if we can get your feedback on it, the feedback we got from the last version was really, really useful. And hopefully we've managed to yeah, update it based on the comments we've got so far.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. I think we can just take a pause there and allow people. Vanessa, come on in to see your hand up to ask any questions. And if we've missed anything in the chat for now and you want to ask it, please come on and ask. And apologies for missing it, but it's very interactive, which is great. So I can't keep up with everything at once, I'm afraid. So Vanessa, come on in.
Okay, hi, thank you, that was great. I just wanted to ask, where does this go from here? Once you have, so I understand that this work is going along kind of in conjunction with the tentative list of assured providers to ensure that they will be able to have something which is compatible with this format and such like. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then from the point at which, so I understand then that there'll be sort of like a first version of the mods ready to go by the end of March or something like that. And from that point onwards, what happens? Does it get piloted, or what happens
That
then?
is my whole work stream plan for the next 3 or 4 weeks that we're doing in our whole program. We're realigning and business planning. But my hope in my work stream was that we develop the standard and it goes as a published standard on our digital social care record roadmap, which is very different to the health data standards roadmap, and work in the same way we have done for other standards that we've currently published for our DSCR suppliers.
Okay,
So it'll
but
be a
it will
whole
be
process.
published as a standard without having checked it out with home care providers, or?
Well, no, we've actually engaged this with home care providers and things throughout this process, and we've got another few weeks of this process to go. But the ultimate goal is to make it a standard for our digital social care record suppliers to implement. And that means working up it as a project with end users and testing and implementation. But we haven't got a written plan for that at the moment.
Thanks.
Mark?
Thanks ever so much, and thanks everyone for the comments. It's been really interesting to listen to. Just one question from myself though, is what considerations have been taken with the more qualitative models, such as free conversations, which some local authorities use, which tend to be more free text in the way that the data is captured?
At the moment, we're not looking at the local authority side of that. It's not in scope for us. It's for the digital social care record suppliers, and they wouldn't necessarily be asking them questions, but it's definitely something to consider in the future as we link it up with a lot of the programme that's going across DISC as a whole. And part of that is also working with the local authority and making considerations in the future development of this product. But for now, that wouldn't be in scope. Have I missed any other hands up or anything? Let me just check. No. Fabulous. Anybody else want to ask any questions before we move on? You're more than welcome. Robert.
Morning. It's really good and really informative. I put a question in the chat and obviously this is social care providers. So I think, the question was just asked about local authorities. That might create a bit of a divide then between social care providers systems being up to a set standard, but actually local authorities social care systems not being to that standard.
We very much need to bring all that together. It's just not there yet, but our programme is around digital social care record suppliers and what they provide to their providers. But I absolutely hear you, Robert.
So is there, because obviously with health, the standard terminology is SNOMED CT, which is supposed to envelope health and social care. So will the mods have a mapping to SNOMED for that interoperability between systems? And sorry, I might be going into the technicalities there, but obviously the NHS standard is fire messaging. I know open air and there's different standards, but that is kind of the route, the strategic route that NHS is going down, and as I understand it, for social care as well. So it seems like we're developing a separate branch standard that we're going to have to map back.
No, I think there's got to be lots of conversations because SNOMED isn't actually fit for purpose for many areas in social care. But Adam is very much involved. You can answer the technical side of it.
Yeah. So in terms of the SNOMED have a number of programs around social care at the moment, to essentially make sure they've got codes for some of the activities and tasks in social care, because at the moment there isn't really enough coverage for it. So there is a lot of work going in at the moment. It's difficult for us to bring codes in that haven't been created yet. In terms of fire, we do have part of the assurance process is we've got one of the chairs of HL7 in the UK to go through what we're creating and map it to fire messages. And one of the reasons we wanted to take ISO 13606 as a background is so that we knew that it would be easier to generate fire profiles off the back of it. So 100% we're aligning with what's going on across the rest of the system. This is really just that first step to say, and also we're bringing in the core information standard, and the fire profiles are being built for the core information standard as well. So definitely we're linking in with all of that. But the comment about SNOMED, I take, we're definitely going in that direction, but we can't bring in those codes until they've brought them in, but it will happen. It's happening. There's lots of projects going on at the moment.
And I know there's limitations with the National Release Centre and capacity and different things, and the time it gets to get the codes out, and then the international element. But yeah, it's I was just kind of working out where they fit in with this. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. I think it was Matt next, and then Katie. Oh, can't hear you, Matt. No, Katie, do you want to go, and then we'll ask Matt again in a few minutes?
Yeah, it's kind of been covered to a certain extent. Just going to say, Adam, have you engaged with the UK Fire Board to develop, who are developing the UK core fire standard? Because it would be important to make sure that the social care needs are, well, certainly starting to be raised there. Is that a group you've engaged with?
100%. Yeah, I can't remember the chat from UK Core. We met him a couple of months ago, 2.5
Kevin
months
Spragg?
ago. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay. Used to be my old team.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking. Okay, that's great, because that's one of the pivotal, in terms of exchange of data, important that the social care angle is represented there. That's but thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Katie. Anybody else at the moment? Kelly? Oh, Matt's ready. Sorry, can I bring Matt in and then to you, Kelly?
I think I'm back. Is it working now?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Supposed to be good at this. Never mind. My question, I only ask one, but it's the biggest one. It's around the actors. Are you squidging up actors and people into one thing? So like, is an actor a person, or can a person be lots of different types of actors? I might be a care worker, but I might also be a personal contact for someone else.
100%. Yeah. So it's just a way of abstracting the information. In some cases, it made sense for an organization to be responsible for a person for a particular activity. And in some cases, it was a care worker. In some cases, it was a volunteer. So that's really all that was about, is could we abstract that out to a general idea of a care actor and the kind of things that needed to be involved at that level, and then go down to the specifics. And probably the reality is, as we develop this, there'll be even more specificity. But yeah, that was kind of what we were into.
Thanks, Adam. Kelly?
Yeah, just to chip in about the Four Nations HL7 and Fire Board. I'm the vice chair of Tech UK for Interoperability, and so I sit on that board. And I can tell you, at the last board meeting, we reviewed the terms of reference, and certainly one of the chair's first comments was, well, I think Jonathan Kay. I think he was chair last year. I think Nicholas Outerbridge is chair now. But anyway, the comment was how important it was to make sure that social care was brought forward. And having sat on that board for a full 18 months, fortnightly, I can tell you I bang the drum every fortnight for social care and dragging us forward the fastest that we can get there. So just to reassure people that there is, just because they're not on the same website doesn't mean they're not aligned. I think we can be more reassured than that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kelly. Martin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, and my understanding, PRSB also sit on the UK Fire Board, etc. And my understanding is they're looking at what should be in Sprint 7. So they're about to start Sprint 6 of UK Core. They're looking at what should be in Sprint 7, and one of the possible, or currently one of the more favourable issues is all around care plans. So doing the fire profiles to support care plans for use in the UK. So it's not fixed, but that's in consideration.
Brilliant. Great to hear as well. Kelly, is that a hand that was from before?
Yep, legacy, sorry.
No worries. Okay, I think that's the questions for now. I think we'll just go back quickly to the slide deck, Ben.
Absolutely.
I think we're up to the feedback slide actually, which is quite relevant to tell people how and where they can get involved. Previous one, I think.
Previous one doesn't actually.
Okay, fair enough.
The information. I think this is the one to go for. So.
Excellent. Okay, so we've talked a lot today about getting your receiving your feedback, which is more than valuable. After this, the slides will be sent out with a survey and a link for you to fill out to give us more detail than we could capture on the polls and at this session today. Please be as descriptive as you can be. All feedback is heard and listened to and worked through as part of the project. The survey will be open for a couple of weeks until the 15th of February, and it will all be analysed to make improvements to our conceptual model and the mods at this time. The glossary working group that we're going to start on the 21st of February, you can see there, anybody's welcome to join. It is the initial discussions of the glossary as part of this project and what's on our tool, but also how we take it further in the coming months and what we want to do with that. And working it into everything that's happening across the piece. So that will be quite a big piece of work as we move forward. But as I say, the engagement and kick-off is the 21st of Feb. Please do come and join us if you'd like to be part of that.
Sorry to jump in, but it's occurred to me this morning that we've actually got a very important agenda item for that glossary working group out of today's session. And just to reassure you that we will go through the chat from this session in as much detail as possible, pick up the comments you've made about the definitions that we've been using for the mods and these other data sets, but also draw out the points about where further clarity is needed. And I think, Alison, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me as if that glossary working group will be a very useful discussion ground for questions around preferred definitions and others.
Yeah, and it'll be a really good working group for deciding next steps and having the bigger discussion about we're not the only glossary. We know we're not the only glossary and how that fits into the wider landscape with everything going on. So, yeah, I think it'll be a really good event to start off and start some future planning around that. And we'll send out all the information at the end of this phase of project, which is coming towards the end of March, but we've got some more communications in between in the next few weeks that will come out to you with of updates. And I think that's it from a slide perspective from us. I think to give you the opportunity in the last 10 minutes or so, we're welcome to ask any questions. But if anybody wants to come in, then please do so. If not, I'm not in the habit of using people's time for no reason, so I will give you the 10 minutes back, which I'm sure everybody on this call will value. So I'll just give everybody a minute. If they want to come in, please do so. Otherwise, I shall close off the webinar. Say thank you very much. Oh, we've got a hand up. Who's that? Please come on in. I can't see who it is at the moment. Who's come in?
It's Miral. Can you hear me?
Hi, come in, Miral. Sorry, I couldn't see your name there. Do you want to drop the slides for us, Ben?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just want to ask you a question to the whole panel. To be honest, we are in a process of going digital, and we have got over 90 sites across UK. So what we would like to do, or where I'm going for, is we are starting something from scratch in terms of digital journey. And I found this really, really useful because I can then design the whole system based on the outcome and some kind of matrix system. Where do you think I should start, or where do you think I should look at first for me to understand the whole journey, or where I should start from?
So are you saying that you're going to build your own digital social care record system rather than use one of the assured suppliers that we're currently working with?
We have got shortlisted couple, but because what I've seen in there is out of 10 or 11 suppliers, 8 of them are actually designed mainly for homes, and that kind of setup is not covering a lot of the social care aspect in that. So the one which we are looking for, they are not there on the shortlisted supplier yet. They are working on it, but they are not there yet because we cover the range of services from living care, complex care to the dom care. It's quite important for us to select a software or provider where we can, can change and alter the things as required.
So I think we can take that conversation offline, Miral, because I need to signpost you elsewhere to speak to maybe our market assurance team or implementation teams for your specific requirements around that. So I'm happy if you just send me an email, we can pick that up offline, not a problem.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, that just leaves me to say thank you so much for joining. It's really good to see you all and the feedback that we're getting to make things better and keep iterating this product. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good rest of the day and we'll catch up with you shortly. See you guys.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.